Nobody has ever asked the one question that could shatter this entire story in a single second. Not the interviewers, not the documentaries, not the endless parade of sympathetic headlines. Just one question. Harry, do you regret it? Because as another dramatic royal showdown begins to dominate headlines, that question is hanging in the air louder than ever. And the timing could not be worse. Just weeks before another expected trip to Britain, the same battle that has followed him for years is back in the spotlight. The security battle, the protection battle, the battle that many people believe has become far bigger than security itself. And when you start pulling on the threads, something strange begins to emerge. The headlines scream victory. The reality whispers something completely different.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. They want to be treated as royals. And that is the one thing they were told you can't do. You can't be inside or outside, just choose. So I think if Ravik decided to give them a royal protection, that would be a terrible, terrible mistake.
If he really felt the way he says he felt about his family, that this is this older institution, he compares his father and brother's life to being in jail or trapped in a cage when he talked to Oprah Winfrey, then why would you set your child up for that by insisting they have a title?
Exactly.
For months, supporters and critics have been watching this saga unfold like a royal courtroom drama that simply refuses to end. Suddenly, newspapers began reporting that Harry had effectively won. Sources were talking confidently. Predictions were being made. Some articles sounded as if the outcome was already guaranteed. But then something unexpected happened. The facts refused to cooperate with the narrative, because when questions were directed toward Harry's own side, the answer reportedly wasn't celebration. It wasn't confirmation. It wasn't even cautious optimism. The response suggested that as far as they knew, nothing had changed at all. Nothing. And that immediately created a mystery. If nothing changed, then where did the victory story come from? Who was celebrating, and what exactly had been won?
The fact they don't give interviews to any other than people who they cultivate and control if they can. Nobody ever asks them, do you regret having lied to Oprah Winfrey? Do you regret having lied on Netflix? And all the magazine interviews, don't you see what a terrible mistake you've made? And are you prepared to apologize? That, I think, is what we're waiting to hear.
The confusion only deepened when people realized this upcoming appearance wasn't even the main event. The actual games are still in the future. This is merely a stepping stone, a warm-up. Yet somehow, even this smaller occasion has become consumed by a question that has haunted Harry ever since he walked away from royal duties. Armed protection, permanent protection, not temporary arrangements, not assessments made case by case. Something bigger, something more permanent. And that is where the entire argument becomes explosive. Because critics have never believed this was simply about safety. They argue it is about status, about roles, about privileges, about whether someone can leave the institution yet continue receiving benefits usually reserved for those still serving inside it. Supporters see it differently. They argue danger doesn't disappear because a title changes. They argue threats remain real regardless of royal paperwork. Two sides, two completely different interpretations, one endless argument.
So here's where the media headlines are getting really squirrely. This is not a win for Harry. This is not a reversal of his clear, decisive legal defeats. It is simply a reassessment for security that has been conducted for the first time in about 5 years.
But here's where the contradiction starts flashing like a warning light. The headlines claimed progress, yet the Sussex team's comments suggested otherwise. The public was being told one story while the official response seemed to tell another. And when those two narratives collide, people naturally begin asking questions. Questions like this: if Harry already receives police protection on many visits when authorities determine it is necessary, then what exactly is missing? Why does the dispute continue? Why has this become one of the most talked about royal conflicts of the last several years? The answer, according to widespread reporting, lies in permanence, a guaranteed arrangement rather than one reviewed individually. And that single distinction has transformed a security issue into a symbolic war, because symbols matter inside the royal world. They matter enormously. Underneath all of this sits another uncomfortable question nobody can ignore: reconciliation, family, the possibility possibility that Harry still hopes for some public sign that the wounds between father and son are healing. Every appearance, every trip, every event seems to carry that invisible question alongside it. Will there be a meeting? Will there be a photograph? Will there be a gesture? Or will there be silence again? And silence inside royal stories is rarely just silence. Sometimes silence becomes the loudest statement of all. Then came the incident that critics immediately seized upon, the alleged stalker story. A woman reportedly getting close to Harry during a charity visit. For supporters, it became evidence that his concerns should be taken seriously. For critics, it became something entirely different, a story filled with unanswered questions. Almost instantly, competing versions of events began spreading online. Some claimed the woman was dangerous. Others claimed she was simply a supporter. Some argued the incident demonstrated genuine risk. Others compared it to previous controversies and questioned whether the threat had been exaggerated. The internet exploded into factions. Every detail became ammunition. Every missing detail became suspicion. And that's where things became fascinating, because the debate was no longer about one woman. It became about credibility. It became about trust. It became about whether the public still believed every dramatic warning being presented. Critics pointed to the lack of criminal charges. They questioned why such a supposedly alarming incident appeared to end without the consequences they expected. Others countered that not every threat ends in prosecution. The arguments intensified. The camps became more entrenched. And once again, the security conversation drifted away from facts and toward perception. Perception is everything, especially in royal controversies, especially when media narratives are involved, especially when every headline seems designed to provoke a reaction. Then another uncomfortable detail resurfaced. Reports suggesting Harry had once gone door to door searching for a friend's house without triggering widespread chaos or attracting dangerous attention. Critics immediately latched onto the story. If danger was so constant, they asked, how could moments like that happen? Supporters responded that isolated examples prove nothing. The disagreement grew louder. Meanwhile, a completely separate security incident near Sandringham reminded everyone that royal protection isn't an abstract issue. Real threats do exist. Real concerns exist. Real risks exist. And that complicated the conversation even further, because suddenly even some critics agreed that protection matters. But notice what happened next. The debate shifted again, not toward danger, not toward safety, toward responsibility, toward choices, toward consequences, because critics began raising a question that has followed Harry for years. If he genuinely fears threats, why publicly discuss military kill counts in his memoir? Why voluntarily reveal information that could attract additional attention? Why take actions that critics believe increase risk and then ask others to solve the resulting problem? Those questions may be uncomfortable, but they have become impossible to separate from the wider debate. And as the arguments continue, another far more explosive issue starts emerging from the shadows. Not security, not court battles, not even palace politics. Then the story suddenly veered away from security and straight into another controversy that critics claimed exposed a completely different problem. Not protection, not court cases, not palace officials, public perception. Because while debate over Harry's security continued raging, attention shifted to a social media post that triggered a fresh avalanche of criticism. A newborn baby appeared in a photograph shared online, accompanied by a caption joking that people might think the child belonged to Harry. The joke was clearly intended to be humorous, but what happened next was anything but funny. Critics immediately exploded across social media, accusing Meghan of turning a friend's special family moment into a headline about herself. Others defended the post as harmless humor, but the damage was already done. The argument had escaped into the public square and was spreading fast. What made the situation even more explosive was the accusation of contradiction. Meghan has frequently spoken about online safety and children's privacy. That position has earned praise from supporters, but critics saw this post as conflicting with that message. Why keep Archie and Lilibet largely out of public view while sharing someone else's child online? Whether fair or unfair, that question began appearing everywhere. Suddenly, the discussion wasn't about a baby photo anymore. It was about consistency. It was about image. It was about whether actions matched public messaging. And then came Father's Day. A carefully photographed breakfast tray appeared online. Croissants, tea, flowers, elegant presentation, the type of image designed to look warm and personal. Yet critics immediately immediately found another angle. They pointed toward Meghan's difficult relationship with her own father and argued that celebrating fatherhood publicly while remaining estranged from him felt contradictory. Others pushed back, insisting family relationships are complicated and outsiders cannot know the full truth. But once again, the pattern repeated itself. A seemingly simple post transformed into another battleground. By now, a larger narrative had started forming among critics. They argued that wherever Harry and Meghan go, attention somehow shifts away from the original purpose and toward them. Charity visits, public appearances, international trips. Again and again, critics claimed the spotlight followed the couple more than the causes they represented. Reports from Colombia and Nigeria became part of that conversation. Stories circulated about expectations, donations, promises, and disappointments. Some claims remained disputed. Others remained impossible to fully verify. Yet the perception lingered. And perception, once established, can be incredibly difficult to reverse. Then came Invictus, perhaps the most emotionally charged aspect of all. Because unlike palace drama, Invictus represents wounded veterans, resilience, recovery, and sacrifice. Critics who once focused exclusively on royal controversies now began asking whether the games themselves were receiving enough attention. They pointed to headlines dominated by Harry and Meghan rather than competitors. They pointed to designer outfits, celebrity coverage, and viral moments. Their argument was simple. The veterans should be the stars, not the royals, not the celebrity couple, the veterans. Supporters fiercely rejected that criticism, arguing Harry remains the driving force behind Invictus and that his involvement helps attract global attention. But the debate continued growing, and underneath it all sat an even bigger question. What happens next? Because time is moving forward. Archie and Lilibet are growing older. The monarchy itself is evolving. Questions about titles, roles, and future royal reforms continue surfacing. Some commentators speculate that Prince William may eventually pursue a leaner monarchy. Others dismiss those predictions as premature. Nobody knows exactly what the future holds, but the speculation never stops. And perhaps that's the strangest part of this entire saga. Nearly every controversy eventually circles back to the same place. Choices. The choice to leave. The choice to speak publicly, the choice to challenge institutions, the choice to fight legal battles, the choice to build a new life in California. Every headline, every interview, every social media post seems connected to those decisions in some way. That's why the security dispute remains bigger than security itself. It has become a symbol of unresolved tensions, a symbol of unfinished arguments, a symbol of a royal separation that still doesn't feel completely settled. And now the clock is ticking once again. Another trip is approaching. Another appearance is drawing closer. The security issue remains unresolved. Questions continue piling up. Critics are louder than ever. Supporters remain determined. The palace stays largely silent. And when silence surrounds a royal story, speculation rushes in to fill the gap. So here we are, years after the original split, years after the interviews, years after the lawsuits. Yet somehow the same battle continues. The same questions remain unanswered. The same divide refuses to heal. And as Harry prepares for another return to Britain, one thing is becoming impossible to ignore.